Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't caused by strangers, they're carved by the very people who raised you. I never imagined that the ones who shared my blood, my own mother, my brother, and his wife, could betray me in ways I still struggle to believe. The pain they caused wasn't a single moment, it was years of silent cruelty that led to one night I'll never forget. Before we dive into what really happened, I want to ask you something. If your own family turned against you on the day that was supposed to be the happiest of your life, would you still call them family, or would you walk away for good? Hi, my name is Renee Cooper, and I'm 25 years old. I was born and raised in San Mateo, California, a quiet, sun-touched town between the ocean and the hills. From the outside, our neighborhood looked peaceful, trimmed lawns, white fences, and polite smiles, but inside our house, love was rationed like an expensive perfume. I was the second child, the one people forgot to introduce at family gatherings. My mother, Sandra, made sure everyone knew my brother Trent was the pride of the family. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the constant reminder of everything she didn't get in life. If Trent sneezed, Mom would call it delicate. If I coughed, she'd say I was careless. My father, Dennis, rarely spoke in our house. He hid behind his newspaper or TV remote like they were shields. He wasn't cruel, just absent. Sometimes, I wondered if silence could be more painful than words. When Mom shouted, he'd look at me with sad eyes, like he wanted to help but had long forgotten how. From the time I was little, I learned to live quietly, to disappear before conflict found me. I cooked, cleaned, and studied in corners. When Trent needed money, Mom would give it without a thought. When I asked for art supplies or a new dress for a school event, she'd remind me that money doesn't grow on trees. In school, I escaped into books and sketches. I dreamed of a life where people saw me for who I was, not for what I wasn't. I worked hard, got into college on scholarships, and took a part-time job at a small design studio. Mom never once said she was proud. But I remember the day Trent got a promotion. She threw a dinner party and toasted to the future of the family. That was the night I promised myself that I'd build a different kind of future, one that didn't depend on anyone's approval. Then, a few years later, I met Alexander. He was gentle where my family was harsh, calm where my home was chaos. He worked in architecture, and I first met him while sketching at a community art fair. We talked for hours about design, cities, and dreams. For the first time, someone looked at me and didn't compare me to anyone else. When Alexander proposed to me, I cried, not because I was surprised, but because I couldn't believe someone wanted me enough to fight for me. He said, "You deserve peace, Renee. You deserve a home that feels like home." We planned a small, elegant wedding in San Mateo Bay. His parents, kind and warm-hearted, welcomed me instantly. They said I reminded them of their own daughter, who lived abroad. I wanted my family to be part of this happiness, even though I knew it was risky. Against my friend's advice, I decided to include them. Maybe, deep down, I still believed Mom would look at me differently just once, as a bride instead of a burden. But things didn't change. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Mom complained about every detail, the dress, the venue, even the color of the flowers. "You're trying too hard," she said once. "People will think you're showing off." Trent laughed and agreed, and Nina, his wife, gave me that smirk I'd learned to fear. Still, I kept smiling. I told myself that after the wedding, once everything settled, maybe love would finally find its way into our house. I didn't know then that the day I wore my white gown would be the day everything shattered, the day when the people who should have protected me would break me instead. I don't remember the first time I realized my mother loved my brother more than me. It was never said out loud, but it hung in the air like perfume you couldn't ignore. Trent was the miracle child, born after years of her struggling to conceive. When I came along 3 years later, I was more of an afterthought, the unexpected one. From the start, our lives ran on different rules. Trent got praise for the smallest things, good grades, a clean shirt, a polite smile. I could win an art contest or bring home straight A's, and Mom would still say, "That's what you're supposed to do." She'd hang Trent's football trophies in the living room, polished every Sunday, while my artwork was pinned behind the refrigerator like clutter. My father, Dennis, wasn't the type to take sides, but in his silence, he always took hers. He'd say, "You know how your mom gets, Renee. Don't argue with her." So, I learned to swallow my anger, even when it burned inside me like acid. By the time I turned 16, I understood the pattern. Sandra's love wasn't unconditional, it was transactional. If you made her proud in public, she'd adore you. If you questioned her in private, she'd punish you with guilt or humiliation. And Trent knew exactly how to play her game. He learned early that Mom's pride was his currency. Whenever he wanted something, a car, a trip, new clothes, he'd say, "I'll make you proud, Mom." I never saw him fail. When I tried to share my dreams of studying design in San Francisco, she shut me down instantly.
Design?
"That's not a real career," she scoffed. "Why can't you be more like your brother? He's practical." It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it, like every word I spoke was a mistake waiting to happen. When Nina entered the picture, things got worse. She was beautiful, outspoken, and manipulative in a way that Mom admired. It didn't take long before Nina became the daughter Mom always wanted. I remember the first family dinner after Trent married her. Sandra couldn't stop complimenting Nina's dress, her cooking, her manners. When I brought dessert, she said, "You shouldn't have bothered. We already have plenty." I smiled through it all, pretending it didn't matter. But every slight left a mark. There were nights I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what made me so unlovable. Dad would occasionally knock on my door, peek in and whisper, "You're a good girl, Renee. Don't let it get to you." But then he'd walk away before I could answer. His comfort came with distance, safe words followed by retreat. After college, when I got my first full-time job at a design firm, I brought my first paycheck home. I thought maybe, just maybe, Mom would be proud. Instead, she frowned. "That's all you earn? Trent makes double that." No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't win. Every accomplishment of mine became an insult to her pride. Every mistake of Trent's became a story of perseverance. The resentment grew quietly. Not just hers, mine too. I tried to deny it, to tell myself I didn't need her approval. But there's something about a mother's love you never stop craving, no matter how old you get. When I met Alexander, he saw through my smile. He told me once, "You talk about your family like they're ghosts you still live with." And he was right. Their words haunted me long after I moved out. Even during wedding planning, I caught glimpses of the same favoritism, Sandra worrying more about what Trent's family thought than about my happiness. Nina inserted herself into every decision, from the catering to the guest list. She'd make suggestions in front of everyone, acting like she was the expert. And if I disagreed, Mom would side with her instantly. "Don't argue with Nina," she'd say. "She's just trying to help." But it never felt like help, it felt like control. By then, I'd stopped trying to win their affection. I focused on my own life, my job, and the future I was building with Alexander. But deep inside, I could feel it. The years of quiet rejection turning into something heavier. Something sharp. I didn't know it yet, but all those years of favoritism and silence were leading toward a single, violent moment. The day I'd finally understand that not every wound is invisible, and not every scar heals. As the wedding day grew closer, the air around my family felt heavier, like a storm waiting to break. The closer Alexander and I got to saying "I do," the more tense Sandra and Nina became. My mother complained about every little thing, the food, the flowers, even the lace on my dress. Nina stood beside her, nodding like a shadow. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was nerves. Weddings can make anyone emotional. But deep down, I knew what it really was: jealousy. Nina couldn't stand that the attention was no longer on her. Ever since she married Trent, she had been the shining daughter-in-law. My mother adored her. Their relationship was built on gossip, control, and mutual praise. They'd sit together for hours, drinking coffee and whispering about neighbors, about who gained weight, or whose child wasn't as smart as Peter. When I got engaged, that alliance started to crumble. Suddenly, I was the one people talked about, the bride-to-be, the one with a stable career and a loving fiancé. That change was enough to light a fire in Nina's jealousy. I could feel it in every glance she gave me. It started small. She'd forget to tell me important details about family meetings or give wrong instructions about vendors. Then she'd act innocent when I called her out. "Oh, Renee, you must have misunderstood," she'd say with that smug little smile. Mom always took her side. "Don't pick fights with your sister-in-law right before your big day," she warned. I stayed calm, even though I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Alexander noticed it too. He told me once, "They're trying to get under your skin, Renee. Don't let them." I tried. I really did. But Nina wasn't done. A week before the wedding, I overheard her talking to Trent in the kitchen. She didn't know I was standing outside the doorway. "I'll make sure her fancy in-laws see who she really is," Nina whispered. "Let's see if they still think she's so perfect after the wedding." Trent laughed, that same cruel laugh that always reminded me of Mom. "Just don't make it obvious," he said. "Mom's already on edge." I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to burst in, to confront them, but I stopped myself. I had learned long ago that confronting them only gave them more power. So I walked away quietly, pretending I hadn't heard a thing, but I couldn't forget those words. In the days that followed, their behavior became colder. Nina volunteered to help the wedding planner but made subtle changes I hadn't approved, like moving the seating chart without consulting me. When I tried to ask why, she said, "I thought it'd look better this way. You should thank me for saving your event." I told Alexander what was happening. He frowned and said, "It's your day, Renee. Don't let them control it. We'll handle it together." His reassurance was the only thing that kept me calm. Still, that sinking feeling wouldn't go away. It was like watching a match hover above gasoline. You knew the fire was coming, but you couldn't tell when. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nina's smirk, heard her whisper. My instincts told me something was going to happen, something ugly. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid, that she wouldn't dare ruin her brother-in-law's wedding in public. But jealousy doesn't have boundaries. It feeds on pride, and Nina's pride was bigger than her heart. I didn't know exactly what she was planning, but I could feel it coming. And when it finally happened, when she made her move on the most important day of my life, it would destroy everything in ways none of us could take back. The morning of my wedding felt like a dream at first. Soft music, the scent of lilies, and sunlight streaming through the wide windows of the Bayview Hall overlooking the San Mateo Bay. For a few precious hours, I allowed myself to believe that this day would finally be mine. My makeup artist smiled and told me, "You're glowing." And for once, I felt it might be true. Alexander texted me a picture of his tie, asking if it matched my bouquet. I laughed through tears. He looked handsome, calm, and ready. "In a few hours, you'll be my wife," he wrote. My heart fluttered. But behind the elegance of the venue, something darker brewed. I didn't know it yet, but Nina had already set her trap. She had taken over the final seating arrangements that morning, claiming that the planner had messed things up. The hall was beautiful, gold-trimmed tables, crystal glasses glinting under chandeliers, but I didn't notice the small but deliberate cruelty woven into the layout. When guests began arriving, the smiles and chatter filled the air. My mother, Sandra, greeted people like she was hosting the event herself. My father hovered near the back, quiet as usual. I could see Nina, perfectly dressed in emerald green, directing ushers and pretending to help. Then, just before the ceremony started, Alexander walked toward me, his expression tight. I could tell something was wrong the moment I saw his jaw clench. "Renee," he said, keeping his voice low, "why are my parents seated next to the restroom?" My heart dropped. "What?" "They're right by the hallway, near the cleaning station, for God's sake. People keep walking past them with trays and trash bags." For a moment, I froze. I could barely breathe. Then it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This was Nina's doing. I looked across the hall and saw it clearly, his parents sitting awkwardly beside the restroom door, forced smiles on their faces as waiters brushed past them. Other guests were whispering, confused and uncomfortable. It was humiliating, a calculated insult. I didn't want to make a scene, not on my wedding day. But I couldn't stay silent either. I glanced toward the seating chart near the entrance and found Nina standing beside it, pretending to adjust a flower vase. My mother stood nearby, arms folded, watching. I took a deep breath, lifted the hem of my dress slightly, and walked toward them. "Nina," I said softly but firmly, "why are Alexander's parents seated by the restroom? They were supposed to be in the front row." She turned, feigning surprise. "Oh, are they? Maybe the planner made a mistake." "I checked the chart," I said. "You moved them." She tilted her head, that familiar smirk creeping across her lips. "Relax, Renee. It's just a seat. Don't be dramatic, it's your wedding day." Her tone was pure venom wrapped in politeness. The heat rose in my chest. I could feel eyes turning toward us. My mother stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Renee, don't raise your voice in front of guests." "I'm not raising my voice," I said quietly. "I just want them moved to where they belong." Nina laughed under her breath. "See? This is what I mean. She thinks the world revolves around her." The words hung heavy in the air. My brother Trent, hearing his wife's name, stormed over. "What's going on?" he demanded. "Your sister's accusing me of embarrassing her," Nina said loudly, pretending to be hurt. "All I did was help." Trent's face turned red. "You're unbelievable, Renee. Can't you go one day without causing drama?" I stood there, shaking. My eyes burned, not from tears, but from years of pent-up frustration. "I didn't cause this," I said. "She did. She humiliated Alexander's family on purpose." The guests around us grew silent. I saw Alexander across the hall, watching, concern on his face. Before I could call him over, my mother stepped between us, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Enough," Sandra snapped. "You've embarrassed this family for the last time." She took a step closer, too close. I could smell her perfume, feel her anger vibrating in the air. "You've always been ungrateful," she hissed. "I should have known this wedding would turn into another disaster because of you." Her words stung like slaps. I whispered, "Mom, please. Not here." But that only enraged her more. "Don't tell me what to do," she shouted, grabbing a handful of my hair. Gasps filled the room. Before I could react, she yanked my head forward and slammed my face down against the glass table beside us. A sharp crack filled the air as the glass shattered. Pain exploded across my cheek and nose. I stumbled, dazed, my veil slipping down, blood trickling down my face. Someone screamed. Guests rushed forward. Alexander was the first to reach me, shouting for help. My vision blurred, but I could hear him yelling, "Call 911. Now." I could barely stand. Through the chaos, I saw my mother still glaring at me, her hands trembling, her face twisted in rage. Trent pulled her back as police sirens echoed in the distance. That was the moment my wedding, the one day I thought would heal everything, turned into a memory I'd never be able to forget. The sound of shattering glass still echoes in my mind like a nightmare that won't fade. For a few seconds after my face hit the table, everything went silent. No music, no laughter, no air. Then all at once, the chaos began. Someone screamed my name. Another voice yelled for napkins. I could feel the sting of glass shards cutting into my cheek, the warm trickle of blood sliding down my neck. My knees buckled as I tried to steady myself, my hands trembling as I touched my face. The pain was sharp, but the disbelief hurt more. My own mother had just attacked me, on my wedding day, in front of everyone. Alexander rushed to my side, his eyes wide with panic. "Renee, don't move, please, just stay still." He wrapped his arm around me, trying to keep me upright. I could hear the guests murmuring, some filming, others frozen in shock. My mother stood a few feet away, chest heaving, still furious, as if she hadn't just crossed an unthinkable line. "She disrespected me," Sandra shouted, her voice shaking with rage. "I won't let her talk to me like that. Not even today." Her words were like a slap all over again. I looked at her through blurred vision and whispered, "You hurt me. You actually hurt me." but she didn't even flinch. My brother Trent grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away as people began to step between us. "Mom, stop, you need to calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down," she screamed back. "This is all her fault. She's ruined everything." The room spun around me. I could taste blood on my lips. Nina hovered nearby, pretending to look shocked but failing to hide the flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. She placed a hand dramatically over her chest and said, "Oh my God, this is terrible. I didn't mean for things to go this far." Her fake sympathy made my stomach turn. Alexander's voice broke through the chaos. "Somebody call the police. And get paramedics here, now." Within seconds, a few guests pulled out their phones. The tension snapped like a string as people started shouting directions. Someone handed me a clean cloth. Another guest poured water over my hand, so I could wash away the blood. The once perfect wedding hall now looked like a battlefield. Broken glass, toppled chairs, and horrified faces everywhere. When I looked at my mother again, she had gone eerily still. Her rage melted into confusion, as if she was only just realizing what she'd done. But it was too late. The damage was permanent. Outside, the faint wail of sirens began to grow louder. My father, Dennis, finally stepped forward, pale and shaking. "Sandra, what have you done?" She turned to him, her voice small now. She made me angry." "Angry," he repeated, his voice breaking. "She's your daughter." The words hung in the air like smoke. For a moment, everyone fell silent again, the kind of silence that only comes after something irreversible. The paramedics arrived first. One of them, a woman with calm brown eyes, knelt beside me. "Hey, sweetheart, can you hear me? We're going to take care of you, all right?" I nodded weakly. My body was shaking uncontrollably now, not from the pain, but from the shock. They placed gauze on my wound and began checking for glass splinters. Alexander refused to let go of my hand. Then came the police. 2 officers entered swiftly, 1 male and 1 female. They spoke firmly, separating people and taking control of the scene. I watched as the female officer approached my mother. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," she said. Sandra's eyes widened. I didn't mean to hurt her. It was just an accident. But witnesses were already stepping forward. Guests, waiters, even the wedding planner, they all described exactly what had happened. There was no saving her. When the officers cuffed her wrists, she began crying. Not out of guilt, but out of humiliation. Trent tried to stop them, yelling that it was a misunderstanding, but when he shoved one of the officers, they detained him too. Nina's face drained of color as the reality sank in. As they led my mother and brother away, I sat on the floor in my ruined white dress, blood staining the lace. Alexander knelt beside me and whispered, "It's over, Renee. I promise. I won't let them hurt you again." But I knew it wasn't really over. Not yet. The bruises on my skin would heal, but the wound in my heart, that betrayal from the people who were supposed to love me, would take far longer to fade. The paramedics lifted me gently onto a stretcher, their voices a blur against the pounding in my head. My face throbbed with every heartbeat, and I could feel dried blood tightening on my skin. The flashing red and blue lights from the police cars painted the glass doors of a venue as they wheeled me outside. The sound of sirens echoed through San Mateo's calm evening air, a sound I never imagined would define my wedding day. Alexander refused to leave my side. He climbed into the ambulance with me, holding my hand so tightly it almost hurt, but in that pain there was safety. His shirt was stained with my blood, his tie missing, his face pale but determined. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. "I'm right here, Renee." The paramedic cleaned the wound along my cheek with gentle precision, speaking in a calm, steady tone. "You're lucky, sweetheart. No deep fractures. But you'll need stitches." I nodded weakly, staring at the sterile white ceiling of the ambulance as it sped toward San Mateo General Hospital. When we arrived, the emergency room lights felt blinding. Nurses rushed me into a curtained bay, asking questions that I could barely answer. My mind was still at the venue, The sound of breaking glass, my mother's voice shouting, the look on Nina's face when she realized things had gone too far. Every memory cut deeper than the wound itself. As doctors began stitching my cheek, I heard Alexander talking to a police officer just outside the curtain. His tone was steady but angry. She attacked her in front of everyone. There's video footage. Guests saw everything. The officer replied, "We've already detained her. She's being processed at San Mateo County Jail, along with her son and daughter-in-law. Your statement will help strengthen the case." Hearing those words sent a strange wave through me, relief mixed with grief. I didn't want to see my mother in handcuffs, but she'd left me no choice. The image of her face, twisted with anger, wouldn't leave my mind. After the stitches were done, the doctor wrapped my head lightly and gave me a mirror. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I looked. The right side of my face was bruised, swollen, and covered with fine scratches, but my eyes were still mine. They looked tired, yes, but stronger than before. A nurse came in with a clipboard. "The police need a brief statement, dear," she said softly. "You don't have to go into detail yet. Just confirm what happened." I took a deep breath and nodded. When the officer stepped in, notebook in hand, I spoke slowly, each word like a weight I had to lift. "My mother, Sandra Cooper, attacked me. She pulled my hair and slammed my face into a glass table. It wasn't an accident." He wrote quickly, his eyes meeting mine with quiet understanding. "Thank you, Ms. Cooper. This will help us proceed with the charges." When he left, Alexander returned to my bedside. His eyes glistened. "I'm sorry this happened, Renee. You didn't deserve any of it." I took his hand. "No," I whispered, but maybe it was time the truth finally came out. Hours later, after the police left and the ER quieted down, the doctor returned to discharge me. I stood slowly, my body aching, but my steps felt firmer than before. The woman who had walked into that wedding as a hopeful bride was gone. The woman walking out was someone new, someone who had finally stopped pretending everything was fine. As Alexander guided me toward the exit, the night air felt cold and clean. The flashing lights were gone now, replaced by silence. For the first time in years, I felt that silence wasn't suffocating, it was peaceful. It was the sound of justice beginning. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, doctor visits, and sleepless nights. My bruises began to fade, but the ache inside me didn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that moment, the rage in my mother's face, the sound of the glass breaking, the gasps of horrified guests. The police had gathered overwhelming evidence, videos from phones, witness statements, and even a clip from the venue's security camera. There was no denying what had happened. Still, a part of me hoped that maybe, somewhere in that courtroom, my mother would at least look remorseful. The first day of the trial, I sat beside Alexander, my hand trembling in his. The courtroom was quiet, filled with the echo of footsteps and murmured voices. When they brought in my mother, I barely recognized her. She looked older, her usual sharpness gone, but her eyes, those same cold eyes I grew up with, still refused to meet mine. Trent followed next, his jaw set in defiance. Nina, pale and nervous, avoided my gaze. My father Dennis sat behind them, his head bowed like a man carrying years of shame. Seeing all of them there, side by side, made my chest tighten. This wasn't how families were supposed to look. The judge began by listing the charges. Sandra Cooper, assault causing bodily injury. Trent Cooper and Nina Cooper, conspiracy and public humiliation. Dennis Cooper, negligence and failure to intervene. The words echoed through the courtroom. My mother's lawyer argued that she acted in the heat of emotion, that it wasn't premeditated. But the videos told another story. She had crossed the room deliberately, shouting, grabbing, attacking. When it was my turn to testify, my heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own voice. But as I looked at the judge, I remembered the paramedics' calm eyes, the officer's quiet understanding, and Alexander's steady hand in mine. I told the truth, not just about that day, but about years of neglect and cruelty. She didn't just hurt me that night, I said, my voice trembling. She spent my whole life reminding me that I wasn't enough. I wanted her love so badly that I kept forgiving her. But this time, she didn't just break glass. She broke the last piece of love I had left for her. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked moved. My father wiped his eyes quietly, though he still said nothing. When Alexander testified, he spoke with conviction. I watched her attack Renee. There's no excuse for it. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure Renee never feels unsafe again. When the verdicts came, the room held its breath. Sandra Cooper, guilty of aggravated assault. Sentenced to 5 years in state prison. Trent and Nina Cooper, guilty of conspiracy and public humiliation. Sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay damages and legal costs. Dennis Cooper, found negligent. Given a 1-year suspended sentence and mandatory counseling. As the judge read the sentences, my mother finally turned her head toward me. For a split second, I thought I saw regret, but then it vanished, replaced by that same bitterness I'd known my whole life. The officers led them away in handcuffs. Nina cried. Trent glared at me like I'd ruined his life. My father tried to meet my eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to look at him. When it was over, I stepped outside the courthouse. The California sky was bright and cloudless. Alexander slipped his arm around my shoulders. "It's done," he said softly. I nodded, a tear slipping down my cheek. It's finally over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just an ending. It was a reckoning, the day truth replaced silence, and justice finally took the place of fear. 3 months later, San Mateo felt different. The same streets I used to drive through now carried a strange kind of peace. The air felt lighter, the noise quieter. Maybe it wasn't the city that changed. Maybe it was me. The trial had ended. The noise, the reporters, the endless court dates, all of it faded into memory. My family was gone, and though a small part of me ached for what could have been, a much larger part finally felt free. I had spent most of my life trying to earn their love. Now I was learning how to live without it. Alexander and his parents had stood by me through everything. They never pushed, never asked for more than I could give. They treated me not as a victim, but as someone healing, someone rebuilding. One quiet evening, as the sun set over the bay, Alexander took my hand and said softly, "We never got our day, Renee. The one that was meant for us, not them." I knew exactly what he meant. So, a few weeks later, we planned something small, not a grand wedding, not a spectacle, just a simple ceremony at a private garden overlooking the water. No extended family, no crowd, no tension. Only the people who had truly cared, Alexander's parents, 2 of our closest friends, and the justice of the peace. When the day came, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the window. I stood in front of the mirror, wearing a soft ivory gown with no veil this time. The scar on my cheek had healed into a faint silver line, a reminder of pain, but also of strength. For once, I didn't try to hide it. I had earned it. The garden was quiet, filled with the gentle hum of bees and the sound of the ocean breeze moving through the flowers. Alexander was waiting under a white arch, simple and elegant, wearing a navy blue suit. When I walked toward him, he smiled, not the kind of smile you give at a perfect photo moment, but the kind that comes from knowing everything you've survived together. As I reached him, he whispered, "You look like peace, Renee." We exchanged vows that weren't rehearsed or perfect, but they were honest. "I don't promise that life will always be easy," he said, "but I promise that you'll never stand alone again." I took his hands and replied, "I don't need perfection. I just need truth, and you've given me that." When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, there were no loud cheers, no clapping crowds, just the sound of the wind and the gentle waves below. I felt tears slip down my cheeks, not from sadness, but from release. Afterward, we had dinner by the bay with Alexander's parents and our 2 friends. His mother hugged me and whispered, "You've been through fire, dear, and you came out shining." That night, as we stood together on the pier, I looked up at the stars reflected on the water and thought about how far I'd come. I wasn't the broken girl begging for approval anymore. I was a woman who had faced her worst fears and still found love waiting on the other side. For years, I thought family was something you were born into, but now I understood it's something you build. And as I leaned into Alexander's arms, the ocean whispering softly below us, I realized that this quiet, honest moment was the life I'd always wanted. A new beginning. A real one. Thank you for watching this story. If you felt connected to Renee's journey, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful real-life stories, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional tales that touch the heart and speak truth. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life every week. Stay tuned, stay inspired, and remember, strength begins the moment you decide not to stay silent anymore.